Nothing else matters. Enjoy the passage of time. Whether you're 16, you're 18, or you're 30, every moment is going to come by where it might be the last moment. It might be the first moment. Just enjoy it.
Welcome to the Strong Dad Show with your host, Adam Lloyd. Together, we are stronger.
Guys, welcome back to the Strong Dad Show. I am joined by Tony Berardo from Dadpreneur, also a podcaster. Tony, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. This is going to be fun, dude. I really appreciate it.
One thing I always start with on the Strong Dad Show is a bit of a growing tradition, and I'll do the same with you. At the end of this episode, I'm going to ask you to provide advice to our next guest if you was to meet them when they were 16 years old. You don't know who they are. You just know they're a man and they're going to become a dad and they're going to have their own challenges in life. The last guest we had on is a guy called Mustafa Salame. He's a refugee who ended up climbing Everest and completing what's called the Explorer's Grand Slam. He's raised over $8.1 million for global causes. His advice to you, if he met you when you were 16 years old, he didn't know who you was going to be. But his advice to you would have been to ask you, what is your Everest? What would your answer have been if you were 16 years old? If someone came up to you and said, what is your Everest? What do you want to achieve in life?
That's such a great question. We were just talking about this before you hit record, but because I'm a kid of divorce and they got divorced at an early age, I think when I was 16, my Everest probably would have been like, I want a family that's together. That's not a sexy answer though. But I think if I was 16, answer. Yeah, if I was 16, that would be the answer. Family is everything, and you don't know what you got till it's gone. So just embrace it.
I had a sort of a moment like that tonight. My daughter was stood on the arm of the sofa, and she wanted to tell me a secret, and in typical child form, you know, the secrets are like they breathe in their entire lungs into your ears, and it's hilarious. But I just closed my eyes, and I was just listening to her, and it was beautiful. But then it hit me. I was thinking, and I don't know why it hit me, but I thought, what if I couldn't see her? What if I had lost my vision? Little things like that. Do you know, is like you said, you don't appreciate what you have until it's gone. It could be the same said for all the little things we have in our lives. People always joke about you'll never appreciate toilet paper until it's gone and you can't wipe your own ass. But even things like, can you imagine losing your sight and you couldn't even see your own child? It's crazy. So that would have been your Everest. How has that played out for you so far?
I think, you know, I always, and I'm trying to raise my daughter like this, especially when she understands the concept as she gets older. She's only 2 now. But I started to realize quite recently that your biggest failures will end up being your biggest success. And I think going back to the original question of that was my Everest, where like I think that made me and has made me a better human. My parents get divorced at an early age. It's made me a better human. It's made me appreciate more things. It's allowed me to be more patient, have more empathy. It's definitely made me a better father because obviously I know, or at least I'm trying to not repeat what I've seen. Not that anything was horrible or, you know, no domestic violence or anything like that. It's just you could see my parents grew apart, like in hindsight, looking back at it. So I think I'm a better person for that. You know, and I think if you talk to successful people all around the world in every genre, whether it's their parents got, you know, divorced or they were raised in the hood or, you know, they were homeless for a couple years and they always end up being better. And I think your biggest failures will get you the most success. You know, like some of the most successful artists and painters and athletes, some of the best ones were really dealt a shitty hand when they were kids. And they kind of had to pick themselves up and work harder. You know, when you're given everything, when you have success from the get-go, you don't know what it's like to not have it. So there's really not a lot of drive and a lot of purpose. So I think you got to embrace the failure. You got to get excited. You know, you got to know, hey, you talk about Everest. How many mountains did he climb before Everest? Probably a lot. And it's not like you could start at Everest, right? You have to kind of go through those failures. You have to tumble down the mountain a few times before you can conquer something like Everest. And I think it's a great metaphor for life, where it's just embrace the suck and get excited about the failures because you're going to eventually get to the top. It just might take you a while.
Yeah, and yeah, you're dead right. Literally, I think maybe a year or so before he attempted Everest, he had never climbed any mountains. Literally none. It was
Right.
almost like a religious calling for him to do so. So it was all, he didn't even know what an ice, what a, like an ice axe was. He didn't know what a carabiner was, all those kind of things. He had no experience. So he had to build it all up over that year. Um, so no, you're very, very much accurate with that. So what is Dadpreneur? I love the term, but what does it mean for you?
I don't know if I coined it. I don't think I coined it. I heard it somewhere, and I wish I can give props to whoever came up with it. But a couple years ago, when I found out I was going to be a father, I already owned my own company, and I still own it. It's the content agency where we do, we develop video content for brands and also teach people how to create content. And I teach people how to make, podcasts. And of course, I have my own podcast, so I monetize that way. So it's kind of this like multi-structured content business. And I've had that for almost 4 years now. So when we decided to kind of go forward and have a kid, I was like, should I go back to corporate America? It's more guaranteed. But if I do that, I'm probably going to be away from my kid. So wouldn't it be better if I make less money and stay at home with my kid 24/7? And that's what I've been able to do. Like I said, she's 2 now. So I kind of combined entrepreneur and dad into Dadpreneur. So
I love that.
Yeah, owning your own company and being a father. And there's, personally, in my opinion, there's nothing like it. It's the greatest thing ever.
And I tell you what, I've probably just had this realization now, but you are the perfect person to be on the Strong Dad Show. And the reason I say that is because when we first come up with the idea of what the Strong Dad Show is, I was saying to the guys, look, I want to create a podcast where we blend the high-performing man with the high-performing dad, where we celebrate the men who have had success with a career or a business, but not at the cost of their family, but also men who have not completely committed to their family at the cost of their career and their dreams. And that whole dadpreneur concept and what you've described there is that perfect blend of both, where you've been able to create your business, that lifestyle business which you enjoy doing, with not only without it impacting your family, but also then supporting your family and supporting the time that you have with your family as well.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I have a whole series on YouTube that I'm starting to ramp up because it's gotten some good response, where I'm teaching dads how to work at home and make money.
Wow.
And I think that's going to be very beneficial. I'm only like 2 episodes deep into it because I just got to do all the editing myself. But I've recorded a bunch of content, and I teach everything from like how to do side hustles, depending on what your skill is. Maybe it's freelance, maybe it's woodworking, maybe it's, flipping things on Facebook Marketplace and making money at home. Maybe it's like if you're a handy dad, maybe you have people come to your garage, drop off like a table that's like shitty, and then you do what you got to do to make it look good and presentable. Maybe you fix it, maybe you fix the legs, maybe you paint it, maybe you sand it, and you give it back to that person. So that way you're doing everything at your house. So I kind of like break down all these different ways that we can make money, because I think, especially as a dad, I mean, we talked about it earlier, but we have this kind of like perception, women too, but dads mostly, we have this thing where we have to work harder. We have to, we got to support our kids. We got to work harder. And I've always kind of had the belief of like, if you want to change the world, just be there for your kids. That's it. Because statistically speaking, whether it's in America, UK, Australia, doesn't matter, if there is no father in the household, that's a shitty household. It's just a fact. And you can look at every single example in, the poorest parts of the country in the US here, and that is true, where over 60% of these households don't have a father, so these kids raise with no father figure. Not saying that the mother's not important, obviously the mother is very important, but contrary to popular belief, most mothers don't leave their kids.
Yes.
Right? It's always the father that's the dickhead and leaves.
It is.
So because of that, we're left with shittier humans. And I think, I'm under the impression that even if I make less money now, the kid's going to be out probably when she's 18, unfortunately. And I'll worry about my shit then. But for now, the biggest responsibility is for you not to climb the corporate ladder It's to raise this little thing that has no idea what the hell's going on and has no idea how dangerous the world is and has no idea how to present herself or himself to this dangerous world. So it's your responsibility to be there as much as you possibly can. And I know a lot of people are listening like, well, I got to drop my kid off at childcare and, I got to work. And listen, I get all that. I'm just saying that I think as a society, no matter where you are, the perception is work hard and then your kid's going to be okay. And that just doesn't make sense. Not on paper, not in my head. I don't know how someone could sell themselves on the idea of dropping your kids off at childcare for 8 hours a day and then you pick them back up and then you have dinner with them and then put them to bed.
Yeah.
Like how can you raise a good human? Now, again, this is not throwing shade at people that have to do that because I'm not saying it's your fault as the parent. I'm saying it's society's fault for pushing this on us and not giving us any benefits. Now, if you're telling me that in America, they're going to start giving us $40,000 annually as a tax write-off to have our kids at childcare, different situation. But you're paying $40,000 a year in America to drop your kid off with a stranger with 20 other kids. Like, you're a dad, I'm a dad. I cannot handle one child. These fucking people are taking care of 20 kids at a time. No. You're telling me they're the best thing for those children? To have one person or two people watch over 20 kids? That's just, it's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. And you have to pay for it. So now you're working harder to pay with a service that, statistically speaking, is raising a shittier human. It's just look at it. I mean, ever since we've had childcare and we've had these systems in place where parents are stripped away from their kids and they have to drop them off with, these folks that don't get paid enough to take care of 20 kids. Our education system has plummeted in the U.S. I can't speak for other countries, but you look at that correlation between like people dropping off their kids, spending less time with their kids, and then the decline of the education system. It's not a coincidence. Like,
I was going to say it's not a coincidence, is it?
It's very clear if you look at the studies. So yeah, I've always just been under the impression that if you could spend more time with your kid, if you're making less money, whatever, because now you're not spending money on childcare. Like $40,000 a year in the U.S. is the I believe it might be 32 now. I think it's $32,000 a year is the average annual income salary of a U.S. citizen. So you spend close to $40,000 at childcare. So if you're just
working to give your child to someone else,
just stop working.
Yeah,
just don't work, and then you save $40,000, and now you get to be with your kid. Bonus.
Yes, exactly. So, and like you said, it is those societal expectations, isn't it?
Right.
That, I remember hearing a stat before. I think they run a study on inmates, and 3/4 of male inmates in prison, and 3/4 of them were raised in essentially a home without a dad,
father's household,
or without a male figure. 3/4. So that says a lot. But you're right, it is the societal expectation that, especially as men, you need to work, you need to progress through your career, you need to provide for the family, you need to earn more money. All that kind of stuff. You need to bring home the bacon, so they say. And because the societal expectations are so broad and they're so deeply ingrained, most people still fall for it. I fell for it, certainly back in 2020. So social media told me I needed to be a millionaire before I could be happy. And we had like a 6-month-old son. And I was chasing this entrepreneurial dream. Like, I ended up having a breakdown. I was medicated for anxiety and depression. And I had to take a few months off work because I had it set in my mind that I was essentially nothing if I wasn't a millionaire. Best thing that ever happened to me because it allowed me to reset and get my life right. But what you've just said there is so accurate because essentially the more money you earn, the more you spend on crap. But the more you earn, typically without this dadpreneur angle on it, typically the more you earn is because you're working more hours, you're giving more time to the company you work for. And I've got a good friend who provided a hell of a lot for his employer. He ended up leaving because they didn't appreciate him. But we used to say, look, when it comes to you being on your deathbed in 60, 70 years' time, you're not going to regret having not worked enough. You're going to regret not having to spend enough time with your family. And
100%.
he's a lot happier now. He's gone to a new employer. But I also see it conversely to the career-driven men, and where this dadpreneur angle is so accurate is because moving away from dadpreneur, you've got then the entrepreneur. And again, the entrepreneur falls into the same trap where they just working. I've got friends in the fitness space, in the fitness industry, online fitness coaches who work, trying to build their own business. When they work it out, they're working for a lot less than minimum wage. But it's because they're trying to build this big business to earn 50K a month because someone told them that's a good figure. And I'm like, why do you need 50K a month? And you're not even seeing your family. Your children are getting put to bed by your wife every night, and you're not getting, why? Just so you can try and find clients you don't really need. It's backwards.
Yeah, it really is. And, I think, again, everything we're talking about is kind of the American dream, right? Is like, come here, work your ass off, and you're going to be able to get everything you want. And I think that's true to an extent if this was 20 years ago. But with the birth of social media and, everything that you're able to do with these little devices, I mean, the amount of money that you can make is quite literally endless. It depends on the scope of skills that you're able to, acquire to get you that. And I think the attitude of like, we need to climb up the corporate ladder, that's flawed now because, and I'm a little jaded, I think. You can probably hear in my voice when I talk about it. It's like I am jaded because I was laid off twice in a matter of a couple of years. We talked about it on our original chat where I went through this pretty gnarly couple of years of working for a company for almost 10 years, getting laid off for a stupid reason that was out of my control. And then a year later, getting a better job, making more money. I was traveling a lot more, and it was way better. But then that company went bankrupt. So of course, everyone got laid off. And then I was like, you know what? This doesn't make any sense because in both situations, I was vastly happier than I've ever been working for a company. But in both situations, I got bent over. And what am I doing? So now I'm working as much as I possibly can. I kind of look at like corporate America and working for a job like death, meaning death is coming for us all. Unfortunate fact, it's happening. I think we're living in a society now with AI and all that. Eventually our consciousness could be downloaded and we might live till 200. But either way, you're going to die at 200, right? So I think it's going to happen no matter what. It's just an evolutionary thing that happens to all of us. And I think the more you embrace it and get excited about it, the more you can appreciate your daily life because you're going to wake up one day and it might be your last day. It's going to be the last time you hug your kid. It's going to be the last time you go to that job. It's going to be the last time you kiss your wife. There's always going to be a last time. And I look at death like corporate America because you're never going to know you get fired or the company goes bankrupt until you know. It's just that's going to be that one day, and then it's going to ruin your entire life, and your life is going to crumble because you've put 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, maybe your entire career. Maybe you've been there 30 years and you're close to retiring, and then you get laid off with nothing to show for it, not even a pension or a gold watch. And now what? And now everything that you've done instead of this career, whether it's family, whether it's traveling or, whatever, everything you've done, now it's lost. You've lost that opportunity to do it because you've invested into something that is out of your control. And I've learned now that I'm over 40 is you can only control the things you can control. That's it. And if you're happy working at that job, more power to you. That's exciting. Then you're one of the few. But I think if you talk to 100 people, the 8 of them will tell you they hate their job, and yet they show up every day. They work their ass off. They're not paid enough, and they're not appreciated enough. So then why do it? Why do it? Why not do something that you're passionate about, get paid a little less money, stop going to Starbucks every week, and just save some dough, and not fall into this materialistic trap that we're in, specifically in America. I can't speak for where everyone else is at, but I know in America shit's flawed over here when it comes to that, for sure.
It's the same. Yeah, it is the same in the UK, and especially where you live. It's like we live on an estate where nice houses, a lot of young, relatively successful career people. So you see like the people similar ages driving Jaguars and Range Rovers and all that kind of stuff. And we've got an electric Mercedes and stuff like that. So you fall into the trap, and exactly what we've said is, yeah, you might earn more money, but you just spend it on more crap. So what are you doing the work for? Like, fortunately for me, I'm not on that career ladder. I'm not working my way up a law firm or something like that. Do you mean? That's just super fortunate for me. But still, I've got a job and coaching on the side and trying to grow the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But I've already picked up on, I think because of the breakdown I had back in 2020, I've already picked up on everything that you're saying around the importance of balance and doing things for the right reason, having enough time with the family. Like, I've just been able to put the kids to bed now before coming in here to record the podcast. It's so important. So how has that changed, and the whole Dadpreneur venture that you're taking now with the podcast, how does that fit in to day-to-day life with the family? What does it look like?
Yeah, well, I think it's a couple things. So unfortunately, it's not as consistent, right? As we both know, where it's not like every Monday at 4 p.m. I have a podcast. You know, it's like it's a little bit more up in the air. So I think it takes a lot of time management. You know, owning your own company and being a father. But for me, how it looks is, you know, I'm fortunate that my wife, even though she works for a company, she works remote. So you know, she's able to take our kid in shifts. So like I'll do the morning shift, for example. So I'll wake up and you know, do the breakfast with her, with my kid.
How old is your daughter, sorry?
She just turned 2.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. So I'll do the breakfast with her in the morning because she's off milk. And, you know, we'll hang out. We'll go for a walk with my dog. We'll go outside. And in the back, we have a trampoline that we kind of play around with. We spend a lot of time outside. And then usually I work out with her in my garage. And wow. I, you know, close the garage door. I do my ice plunging. And when I do my cold therapy, she's usually she's not in it, but she has her hands playing with like duckies and cups. And so I kind of make her part of it. And it's, you know, 45-degree weather. She doesn't care. She's all about it. Or 45-degree water, rather. And yeah, she's all about it. So then we get out of that. I work out for a little bit, usually 20 minutes, 30 minutes, just kettlebells, nothing crazy. And she has this little workbench in the garage. It's it's from Lalo. It's a really cool, like, aesthetic workbench with fake tools and stuff.
Okay.
So she'll play with that. And, you know, that's like what I just described is about 3 hours. So then when we get done with all that, then we go back outside one more time. We'll go upstairs to read some books. And then I kind of start winding her down. I put her down for a nap around noon. And then from noon is when my day starts. So from noon to 5 p.m., I go hard. And during this time, obviously, when my kid wakes up from her nap, this is when my wife takes over. And she usually closes out the day with her and cooks dinner and stuff. So during that time from 12 to 5 is when I dump everything in. Usually Monday and Tuesdays is like I'm creating content. Maybe I'm having a couple conference calls like we are now. I kind of book that in. And I work on what I'm going to do for the week, whether it's scripting out videos for brands or, you know, setting up conference calls or maybe doing consulting with some brands that I do. I manage their social media and I help them with podcasts. So like all that type of stuff is kind of mixed into Monday, Tuesday. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is usually like my, believe it or not, planning for the following week. So like I'll record, I'll edit, I'll do a lot of like stuff, playing music in the background. I'm in the zone. I got my headphones in. I'm doing a lot of editing and then I plan out for the following week of recording and things like that. So it's just a very busy time because I'm only working from like 12:31 to 5. So it's 4 hours where I'm going hard, but I don't stop. Like my wife knows not to knock on the door. If she needs me, she can text me because I'm just in it. Because I know the second I go downstairs and my daughter gives me a hug, Dada, that's it. I'm done. And I need to focus. And, you know, that is the hard thing, right? Because as a entrepreneur, I mean, you're commission-based, right? It's 100%, it's all on you. But, you know, I go back to that's not that stressful. It sounds scary to people. People are like, well, I can't do that. I need security. And dude, nothing's secure. You know, a buddy of mine once told me that owned his own company. He said, the only security you have is every single 2 weeks you sign a contract with your company. Because Bi-weekly, they're going to pay you. But one day, they're not going to pay you. So it's that 2 weeks, and they'll give you 2-week notice. Like you're guaranteed for 2 weeks. That's your guarantee. Other than that, there is no guarantee. And once I kind of wrapped that around my head, I realized that I'd rather bet on myself. Is it hard work? I would say it's probably harder, sure, because there is no guarantee. Like, what am I going to do with retirement and all that? But this is all things where if you just look at where we are nowadays, where you can invest money into like a Roth IRA, or if you want to go in the stock market, whatever, the S&P 500, like whatever you got to do to invest money, that's more quote unquote guaranteed for your retirement than maybe working at a job. Because if your job gives you a 401k, well, guess what? That's going in the stock market. So you can just do it on your own. Everyone thinks a 401k is this like special thing that only companies possess. No, dude, all they're doing is taking a chunk of your money and doing something that you can do if you were unemployed. They just call it a 401k to make it sound sexy. Yeah. So I realized that I'm not really worried about retirement when it comes to that because, again, we talked about it. You never know when your last day is going to be. So, like, what are we saving all this money for? What are you? Yeah.
It's
so silly. You're worried about retirement in fucking 50 years, dude. Worry about your kid that's at the couch playing by yourself. Focus on that. Everything's fine.
Yeah, it's surprisingly one of the hardest things I find. Something I'm really working on. So I'm going to need to pick up some tips from you on how to get in that state of flow and block out distractions. I find it really, I guess, annoying, but also strangely just bizarre that one of the hardest things I find in life is just being present. It's like, but how can it be so difficult? Because I always say to people, like, what we're doing now, this conversation, technically this is the only life we're ever going to have because the past is gone, doesn't exist. The future doesn't really exist because it only ever becomes this present moment. But also what you've just said about savings and pensions, the future isn't guaranteed. It isn't promised. My wife is a palliative care nurse, so she nurses people whilst they're dying. That's sort of like that last phase. And she's definitely got that same mentality as you. She's like, I'm living for the now. You spend so much time worrying about, like I said, what's going to happen in 50 years' time. Who said you're going to get there?
Yeah.
But in the meantime, even if you do get there, in the meantime, you've only got a set amount of years with your children. Like these first 6-7 years are so magical. They'll hit 12, they won't want to know you. 18, they'll be out. And then you've probably still got another 20 years or so to square your shit together in terms of retirements or flipping houses, whatever you want to do. But we spend so much time climbing that career ladder, trying to keep up with the Joneses, with the nice cars and the nice houses and the nice holidays.
Yeah.
While our children are just growing up so quickly and we're not noticing.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And, but again, it's something that it's hard to wrap your head around because, again, specifically in the West, where the propaganda that we've been fed is this is the machine that you need to be involved in because it's the only way you're going to be successful. And I think 100% that was true 50 years ago, but it's just not true anymore. And I think we're able to innovate and kind of change things. And I mean, look at where companies are now, where everyone's working remote. Imagine where your life could be. If you can just think about where you really are the happiest. Let's say you want to go to Europe and you want to hang out in Italy, right? And you love Italy. And you go to Italy, you go down there, and you're there for 3 months. You're staying in Airbnbs, and you're able to work remote now because your company is remote. Wouldn't that be better than being in New York, spending $5,000 on a flat, getting paid? Like, wouldn't it be better to be in Italy, countryside, sipping on wine and having some unbelievable pizza and bread every single day and walking around and seeing 2,000-year-old structures, but you're still getting paid the same, but now you're able to reallocate those funds into something that, is worth a little bit more physically to you. Maybe it's not the Lamborghini or the nice, penthouse suite in New York. Maybe instead of that, you like the countryside in Italy. And I think we're at the position where now you can do that versus 50 years ago you couldn't. And that's what is so hard for people because They think America is the only place you could be successful. And I think there's a good argument to say that America is great because of the innovation and the technology and kind of where we are. I mean, people that are, whether it's in the UK or I have a buddy that actually lives in Italy, and he comes here 6 months a year or 6 months out of the year. And he's like, America is the greatest thing ever. Of course it is to him. Because in Italy, where he came from, you know, he lives near Rome, it's 60% taxes. The average person makes like $12,000 a year over there. So of course, when he comes over here and he can make 50 grand, this is like amazing. But then the question becomes, well, what do you do with that 50 grand? He's buying nice cars and he's going out to dinners and he's doing. Okay, but in 60 years, imagine all the money you wasted on those things that you thought were better. Where does that money go? And I think this is the perception that we need to kind of switch a little bit off, because again, the American dream is great and there's so many great benefits to it, but there's a fascinating proverb that I always kind of revert to, if it's okay if I share with you for a second.
Please, yeah.
Is there's this villager that, you know, every single day he wakes up and he goes fishing with his buddies, and he's in the middle of nowhere, right? And they catch fish every single day, then they come back to the village and they cook it for everybody in the village. You know, this village is like 20, 30 people. And they're around campfire and they're telling stories and they're drinking wine and they're having fresh food and there's fish and everything's great. And they do it every day. Every day they do it. He wakes up, ass crack of dawn, goes fishing, comes back, same thing, and he loves it. It's very mundane and routine, but he loves it because he's with his friends and his family. This American comes by, he sees the village, and he looks at this, you know, system, if you want to call it that they're doing. He looks around and is like, this is amazing. You have all these people that are hopping in boats every single morning. They're grabbing these fish. They're coming back and they're feeding these people, but they're not selling it. Like, they're just giving the fish away and you're eating it and having a great time. The American goes out with his villager and says, man, this is great. You got to show me your ways. Villager takes him out, does fishing, comes back, campfire, stories, wine, the whole routine, right? Next day, American's like, okay, you know what we need to do? We need to take like 3 or 4 boats and we all need to go out and we need to have a bunch of villagers, and you could give them a portion of these profits. You take them out, you each do your fishing, you come back, you sell to other villages. And then once you sell to the other villages, then we'll take that money, we'll divvy it up against everybody, and we can grow this into like this massive empire. And the villager looks at the American like he's an alien. It didn't make any sense to each other. He goes, why did I do that? And the American goes, well, once you do this, you'll accumulate enough money and wealth to where one day you can retire and not do this anymore. And the villager goes, okay, how long would that take? And he goes, I don't know, like 30, 40 years. And the villager's like, that's a long time. He goes, yeah, but imagine what you could do. Like, what would you do if you could retire one day? And the villager looks at him dead in the face and goes, I would wake up, go fish with my buddies, come back to my village, tell stories around the campfire, drink wine with my friends and family.
I would do exactly what I'm already doing.
But the American comes in and thinks he has this great...
Yeah, I tell you what...
It doesn't make any sense, and that really encompasses the American mentality in, 3 minutes. It's just... But it doesn't make any sense.
But it makes perfect sense because that's so real. Like, how many times has that happened in the world? That would have already happened thousands of times. And I'll give you a real-life example as well. When I mentioned I had that breakdown back in 2020 and I was chasing this big entrepreneurial dream, I had some time off work, I was medicated, really struggling. Like, I used to watch the sunset every night and I'd be depressed, thinking, another day, you're a failure, you've achieved nothing. Couldn't even appreciate my own son in the house. But anyway, I sat down with the counsellor and the counsellor did a similar thing. Like, okay, what is he trying to achieve? Map out your perfect day. So I mapped up my perfect day, and my perfect day went like this. I'd wake up, take the dog for a walk, take the kids on a school run, go for a coffee with my wife, go to the gym, pick the kids up, come home and have dinner. And the counsellor's like, you don't even need any job to be able to do that. You're trying to earn this money to buy this yacht and these jet skis or live in Dubai. You've just described your perfect life. You could do that on what over here we call the dole, on benefits, on job seekers allowance. You don't need any money to be able to do that. And I was like, well, what am I chasing? I remember we was on holiday in the south of France in Coulier. Beautiful, beautiful little seaside village, Coulier, and we were sat on the beach having like I guess it'd be called a brunch, like an early lunch kind of thing, like a breakfast lunch. We was having it there with the family, and there was this woman on the beach just reading. Or she must have been reading there for about 3 hours, right? Just on the beach. She'd go into the sea, she'd come out, dry off, have another bit of a read, go back into the sea, do a bit of sunbathing, all that kind of stuff. And anyway, hit about 1 o'clock. She went into the shower, put on just a dress, threw over the dress, and went over into, just crossed past us, into the travel office for all of the tourists. That's where she was working. So and it hit me, I was thinking, I'm chasing this big thing and to have all this money and to go on these nice holidays. She's done no chasing in that morning. She could have been in her apartment building up a website or trying to sell candles or whatever it might have been. But I was like, no, she's got her life together. She just relaxed all morning, wasn't chasing nothing, wasn't trying to impress no one, did what she wanted to do, went for a swim in the sea, read a book. She must have been there for about 3 hours and then went to work in the sort of the tourist's office. And I thought, she's got it sorted.
She's got to figure it out.
Yeah, she's got it figured out. So
she's got to figure it out. I love that. Like when they hear this, they'll be like, well, it's easier said than done. And I go, it is. It's hard. But, again, when you go to these other countries where we're talking about, whether it's a third world country or, a civilized society like Italy, when you go there and you don't tell them what you have in America, meaning you just watch these, observe, like the tourist or the lady that works at the tourist place that we were talking about. When you watch these people function in a society, I keep bringing up Italy because we were just there, and we were in parts of Rome and Salerno and Amalfi Coast and all these places, but we specifically stayed away in Airbnbs away from the tourists. And you watch these Italians function. It's fascinating because they don't care about cars. They don't care about, Italian vehicles. You think, oh, everyone's chasing a Maserati over there. No. The only reason they have those vehicles is to sell it to stupid Americans. That's why they have them. All these other people are driving Fiats from 1970 that they fixed up themselves with their bare hands because that's what they like to do on a Saturday morning. And, they like to grow their own wine because they know that they can charge people $25, $30 a bottle because they're stupid. But they love the process and they love waking up every morning and doing the manual labor. And, everyone kind of looks at that, and I look at that society and people are like, well, yeah, but they don't make enough money. And how are they going to retire one day and all that? And it always goes back to that. But I started thinking a little bit differently to where I would rather pick up and leave and get out of America and go somewhere where I could just enjoy the next 20, 30 years of my life, because I know that I don't need to save up a bunch of money to eventually go on vacation somewhere. What are we saving all this money for?
Yeah. What is retirement? Why do we have to retire? A lot of these people, these local Italians, will never retire.
Yeah.
You look at, I heard something before, the word retirement is literally not in the French dictionary. They do not have a word for it, and the Japanese dictionary as well. I think it's a Japanese dictionary. They do not have a word for it because it's just not a concept.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, and even in America, we look at the Social Security fund that goes in. I think I was reading something where it might even be in 2030. There's not going to be enough Social Security to pay out to people. Which are you familiar with the process of how we do it here with Social Security?
Is Social Security sort of like a state pension?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
Where it's when you retire, you get your Social Security paycheck. But essentially, all that is, it's the generation after you that pays for it.
Okay.
So, we're paying for, older people right now, like me in my 40s. I'm paying for older people to end up with that money one day. But because of, because our population has declined over the years, there's not enough people putting in that money now to pay for future generations, if that makes sense.
Makes sense.
So that's a problem. So again, we go back to, you got to control what's in your control. And that unfortunately is not in your control. So all these baby boomers and my parents and great grandparents, they're always talking about, well, you got to pay your taxes and put money away and, do this and 401k because eventually you gotta. But if the stock market goes to shit, well, now you're in a different situation, aren't you? So then you're counting all this money to like be okay down the road when meanwhile you're missing like all the cool things and you're just working your ass off.
It's crazy. And like I said, everything always comes back to taxes, the importance of taxes paying into the system. Go to Dubai and they'll take practically nothing from you. They'll take nothing from your personal income. They'll take like 9% of your corporation tax on your business. Is that true?
9%?
Yeah, I think the corporation tax on or the profits that your business makes is like 9%. And then whatever money you take out of that in your personal allowance, it's zero. They take zero. Literally, if you paid yourself $50,000 in Dubai, whatever that is, you'd get 50,000. You'd pay no personal income tax on it.
Nuts.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. But like you said, you mentioned people who say, "Oh, it's easier said than done to live this more simple life." It is easier said than done. Well, it isn't, easier said than done. If you've tied yourself up with a 6-bedroom house and 2 Range Rovers and a Maserati, and you've now got $10,000 a month of outgoings just on fancy things.
Totally.
You lock yourself into the system then, don't you?
Yeah. No, that's right. Which, by the way, that's by design.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
That's by design. It all starts from like an educational standpoint as well. Like here in America, the curriculum, the way it's laid out, like we don't teach our kids nowadays to fend for themselves. We teach them rules and, if you don't pass the quiz, you're a failure. And like we teach them these things because we know, we as in the government knows that if we raise humans to be reliant, right, on us, the government, that's how we win.
I literally, it's crazy you mention it because I literally recorded just a podcast on my own about this probably about 4 hours ago. And it was precisely about how the education system is broken, and particularly it's broken for young men, because men young boys more so than young girls are more curious, have more energy and stuff. And you just got to sit them down on a sterile chair and say, learn all this information. But it was exactly those references that you've just mentioned there about, it's all about getting that A grade, and an F on your paper is bad, and you've got to put your hand up to speak and seek approval from your teachers. And it was all built around that industrial revolution where
authority.
They needed compliant workers in the factories and people who could count and read and write for the factories.
That's right. Authority. Yeah, they want us to be afraid of authority and do as we're told and listen. And, you look at every single successful millionaire, not saying that that's the formula that we want to follow, but the most successful people in the world are the ones that dropped out of school, the ones that didn't listen to the art teacher when the art teacher said they're never going to make it. They're the ones that kind of did things on their own and went off the beaten path. And it's true what they say. I mean, the path, what do they say? The path less traveled is the right path or something like that. Something like that, isn't it? Yeah. And that's what it is. I mean, the path that seems like, or the path with the least resistance. And that's the truth is when you look at like 2 paths, if there's a fork in the road, the hardest path is probably the successful one. That's the one you want to go down. But a lot of people don't go down there because we're taught stay in your chair, be safe, stay in the lines, don't do the right things. That's the path that we're told to go down, and that's just not the right path. That's the compliant path, and that's the path that is going to lead you to corporate America. And, again, this sounds like a Bash Corporate America podcast, but really, at the end of the day, I think it's whatever's best for you and your family. But if you want to be a successful corporate guy, business owner, whatever you want to call it, and to be a successful father, now it is possible. It is possible. You just have to figure out different ways to get there. Don't think the way is to start as an intern and then move up the corporate chain until you're CEO. Because when you become CEO of a big corporation, or even like me, I was CMO at one point at a big company, and it's not all it's cracked up to be. There's more pressure, there's more hours, there's more stress, and you've talked to every single person, your wife included probably, that talks to people on their deathbed. The reason why a lot of people pass away, especially at an early age, is chronic induced stress.
100%. I always say
So-
it's the biggest killer, and people
The
don't
biggest
appreciate
killer.
it.
Yeah,
Stress
a lot of
is
people.
the biggest harm of your health.
Yeah, and a lot of people think, like, especially with men, it's heart disease, right? Well, you don't just have a disease of the heart. It's stress. That's what it is. That's what kills the heart, is when your blood is pumping and you're stressed out and you have anxiety and all this stuff happens for years and years and years and decades upon decades. Eventually, yeah, your heart's going to fail because you're inducing stress.
Factors of, because you're always stressed, you're drinking more. Because you're always stressed, you're snacking more on sugary, crappy foods, all that kind of stuff. Because you're stressed, you're not sleeping well. And it all comes back to that stress.
That's the X factor. So what do we got to do? Well, as men, be self-aware. Are you being stressed out? Okay, well, eliminate the stress. That's it. Eliminate the stress. And as someone who, I've battled with a lot of different things, health issues in the past, Crohn's disease is one of them. And that is, there's a lot of factors that induce episodes, and every case is different. But for me, I realized that stress was a big factor. Like when I got stressed out, it was gnarly. It would induce, a Crohn's episode on me. So for me, it was like, okay, I got to do that. I got to figure that part out. And I figured that part out, but then I realized, my job was also inducing it, right? So then that's it. I got to work for myself. And even though I do get stressed out sometimes, usually the stress when you work for yourself is pretty easy to manage because you're the only employee. So you're like, no one's really stressing you out. I mean, maybe you're stressed about not paying your bills or whatever, but if that's the case, as we mentioned numerous times, maybe your break even's too high. Maybe you're spending too much money. You have a bigger house than you should get. And, again, I always go back to, if I was in a different country, what would make me happier? Like, do you want to live in New York or California? Probably, but it's expensive. So get out, because you can be happier in other places. We just have to get out of this brainwashed society that we're in, which is like, if you want to be an actor, LA's the way to go, right? If you want to be in the stock market successful, New York is where you got. No, it's not. You can be successful doing a lot of different things in a lot of different countries. There's people that are in Ohio that are successful, or more successful rather than the people that are in New York, right? It's whatever you define success as. But I would imagine that if you go to these different places that we're talking about, where people don't have as much money as the New Yorker in the penthouse, they're probably more successful, mentally and physically. They're more successful. Maybe not financially, but they're more successful on a day-to-day.
Exactly. And that's what I always come back to, is how do we define success?
Sure.
Because you've mentioned two big professions there, an actor or in the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, people go into either of those professions because they want to earn a lot of money, because they want that beachside mansion and the Ferrari and all that kind of stuff. But what is success? I used to think success was your wealth, how much money you had. And that was before I had my breakdown. Massively different opinion on that now, especially now that I guess I've become more aligned to the outlook that you have in life. But that's what people need to ask themselves, isn't it? Is, what does success mean to you? If you want to be successful, define it. What is successful?
Yeah. I have an answer to that. Do you mind if I ask you?
Yes, please.
What's your answer to it?
Oh, so what I define as successful?
Yeah. If you have one.
I haven't really nailed down an answer. But what I would define as successful is, I don't know, I know what it is because I'm living it now.
Right.
But it's hard for me to put it into words.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like I know I am living completely successfully now because I'm happy every day I wake up. I get to see the children every morning. I do every school run. Literally every morning I do the morning school run. Sometimes I do the pickup. I take them to their sports. We have great quality time. I'm earning enough money to pay the bills and a little extra so we go on a family holiday. I've got my health, loving wife to be, a great relationship with her. And I'm motivated with my business. I'm driven by things like these. I've got aspirations, not financial, but I've got those goals and something to work towards. So for me, that's successful. If you said to me, do you want to change lives with, like, I love Formula One. If you said, do you want to change lives with Lewis Hamilton right now? I'd say, no, thanks. I don't want to be traveling. I'd miss my kids. I don't want to be
vegan
hotels every weekend. I'm all right. Literally, I'm good with the life I've got. I think I'm successful because I know that if every day for the rest of my life was as it is now, I'd be more than happy. I don't need anything else to give me any more happiness. Probably a long way to say it, but that's what I'm trying to get to. I'm living it now, but it's hard to put into words.
No, that's you. I mean, you put it into words perfectly. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the routine is like, if you can figure out something that you can do forever and be happy with it, I think that's success, right? Like for me, I think it's a lot of that, what you're talking about, but also it's, at the end of the day, how I look at like success, because I think I've been more successful on paper than I have been today, for example. Like I've been more successful maybe 5 years ago than I am right now on paper. But like if you were to ask both versions, I'm way more happier now. So, success isn't always happiness and vice versa. So I think it just depends on A, where you're at in your life, but also B, like, I don't necessarily look at success like right now. Like how you're saying you can't describe it. I think you are describing it good, but I also think you can't find the words correctly, because success to me is like the finish line. And you're not at the finish line yet.
Yeah.
Like there's no way to, like, I'll tell you what my definition is. Success to me is like when they're around my gravestone, right? What are they going to say? That to me is success, because that was it. That's the finish line. That's, you can't judge someone by their shittiest mistakes. Judge me for my small wins. Like that's how I kind of look at things, to where like at the end of the line, they're going to say he was the best father. Like that, because that's success, right? They're not going to say, man, he was the best employee.
And yeah, he drove a nice car.
No one's going to say that. Yeah. His house was the best. No one's going to say that. No, that's not success. So that's how I define success, is like, what are they going to say when you're gone? Almost like success and legacy, I think, are pretty close together.
I was going to mention the word legacy. Yeah.
Yeah. Because again, so I don't think, like, if anybody says they have success figured out, I don't know if you do yet. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's exciting. Like so kind of how you're describing where you don't know, I think that's a good thing, because you don't know because you're not done yet. Maybe you're just getting started. Yeah. So how do you know what success is, right? Yeah, like, exactly. I think if we can continue to live our lives like that, where success is the finish line and we just have to, slowly work to that, I think that's where the fun is.
That is definitely. Yeah. And one of the visions I had in mind when I was creating Strong Dads and what is the Strong Dad movement is of like a grandfather on his porch when he's, say, 85, and he's talking to his grandchildren, and they're asking him about his life, and he can refer back to the time where he got involved with Strong Dads that changed his life in terms of being surrounded by the right people, regaining his strength, his confidence, his alignment with the purpose which he was supposed to have in life, all that kind of stuff. In terms of then that, I guess, that legacy from Strong Dads, that's my vision for that as well, where an elderly guy can say, that's when my life changed, when we started living in this way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, and I think if every dad can kind of have a little bit of that, that's where the power is, And I would even challenge dads out there to just kind of think to themselves, because I know we talk a lot about fitness and things like that. Like, there is a real problem, I think, with, and I've seen it in my own personal life, where dads don't understand the power that we have. Where that's why I work out. I mentioned my routine. I work out with my daughter, because she can't work out. She's 2, but she knows what I'm doing. She's like, why is he fucking doing this every day? I'm like, he's lifting these things up over his head. He's swinging this monkey kettlebell around. What is that? What's the purpose of this? She's going to understand 2 things from it. A, dad can kick your ass. Not my daughter, but if there's a threat,
well, depends how you behave.
But if there's a threat, daddy can protect me. And then B, he's disciplined. And I think that's the power that we have as a dad, is you can show, you don't have to tell your kids to work out. They'll figure it out, or they won't, whatever. But if you can show them that you're disciplined and that you are able to take care of yourself and you're healthy and it's important to you, they're going to grow up, maybe not working out, but they're going to grow up understanding discipline and understanding routine and structure and the importance of health. And I think that is the power of being a dad. And especially when it comes down to like the hours that you spend exhausted and not wanting to do it, even if you just grab a 5-pound dumbbell, bro, and hit the gym with them and do some push-ups, do some jumping jacks, go on a walk, like those little things show strength and show routine. And it's also important to get those habits, into their brain at an early age, because, when your kid's 15 and they're overweight from Cheetos, it's going to be really hard to get them on the treadmill. But if you can show them routine at an early age, it's going to help you because you're going to be healthier and, live longer to hang out with your kids. That's a bonus. But B, you're going to show them, the discipline and the strength that you need to have in this world as a human.
100%. You mentioned, having more years with your kids, but then also, if you don't look after yourself, you may not even have the opportunity to meet your grandchildren.
Right.
And I've got, and again, only personally to me, and I know I ruffle a few feathers with some people, but I've got that quite archaic thought and opinion that men need to be men at times as well, in the sense that as your role as a man, as a dad, yes, you could be seen as the provider, the protector, all that kind of stuff. But that protector element is very important because exactly we've mentioned, if there was ever a threat to your family's turning to you. And not saying you need to be able to kung fu kick 12 people in a bar, but you need to be able to protect yourself. But you also need to be able to carry the confidence of someone who can protect themselves. There's a reel which I've seen before. I think someone had interviewed one of the biggest child sex predators or something. And she basically asked him how he picked his prey, or essentially what were the children. And his answer was that he'd first assess the parents. If the dad was disconnected, distracted, looked weak, looked vulnerable, then game on. If the dad looked like he could protect himself, then no go. And that's not actually understanding or actually figuring out the physical capacities of the dad. That's just on how they looked, how they carried themselves. And I always say to guys that, look, there is a 1 in a million chance. I don't know the exact figure, but I'm guessing there's maybe a 1 in a million chance, or maybe a 1 in 1,000 chance that someone is eventually going to try and cause harm to your family. They might try and take your wallet when you're on holiday with your family, whatever it might be. 1 in 1,000 chance, 1 in a million chance, 1 in a billion chance, I don't care. Because when that one chance comes, I want to be capable and I want to be ready. I want to be prepared. Because nothing is worth me accepting that risk of my family getting hurt.
Yeah. Oh,
but there's a lot of guys who, they just don't appreciate that because life makes it so easy to be comfortable, to be overweight, to be obese even, to be completely out of shape, mentally and physically. It's just so easy to live that life these days.
Yeah, man. And there's really, one thing I learned a long time ago. I've been in fitness a long time, and I'm obviously more passionate about it now that I'm a father. But just people, we're just, and I think it all comes back to like what we're fed, right? Propaganda-wise, is you just think it's so nice. Like you think this world is so nice. Like you think you walking down the street trick-or-treating with your kid is so nice until you get razor blades in your Milky Way. Like, people are fucked, dude. Like, the world is not nice. The world is shitty. There's multiple wars going on right now, December 2nd, 2025, and potential wars all around the world that you have no idea when it's going to happen and when it's going to get worse. Like, the world is not nice, and your corporation that you work for is not nice. Everyone's greedy. Everyone's out for number one. And if you don't start thinking like that, if you're not thinking, I'm number one, I'm the dad, I need to take care of myself. If you don't start thinking like that, it is going to hurt one day. And it might be when you're 50, it might be when you're 80, it might be when you're at work and you're not even with your family. And how shitty would that be? You know, because you can't expect your daughter and your wife to have the same level of, mental and physical strength that you do. You have to be there. And that's why I always say, everyone always makes fun of me because I'm with my wife and my kid 24/7, literally 24, like I go everywhere with them. And even when she goes to Target without my kid, I have anxiety. And a lot of people think I'm, well, dude, don't you want to hang out with the boys? And no,
No.
No,
I'm the same.
because
Like, no.
yeah,
There's
what
no
if,
offense, no.
bro? Like, what if I'm out with you drinking, having a good time? God forbid something happens to my wife or my kid. Bro, there's going to be a level of resentment for that process. I don't even know what I would do to myself. I would probably hurt myself. I would probably go down a very dark hole because all I wanted to do was just have a Miller Lite with my buddies. No, it's not worth it. And it's, again, we can argue this back and forth, everybody, but the fact is, when these kids move out, you can go back to enjoying your life and partying. And also, I did my partying in my 20s and my 30s. I'm good. So some people maybe might have that FOMO now that you're a dad and you're like, well, I didn't do that. That's your problem. That was your issue. Now is not the time to take a break from your kids. That's crazy talk. You know, you shouldn't have had a kid. If you really cared about playing video games and going out to the bar all the time, yeah, then you made a mistake having a kid, and that's your fault. Now you got to own up and be a man about it because your kid doesn't know any better, and it's not fair to them that you want to go off away from your kid to do other fun shit. It's exactly. That's not their fault, bro. Like, that's a little human. And when you see these things, and I know how passionate you are about it, when you see like these kids go through these ages, like now our kid is 2, and what she's been able to do like the last 6 months specifically, it is mind-blowing, bro, where she is like copying everything you're doing. She sounds like you. Her face looks like you. You know, she's saying things like you. Like, she's singing on her own now. Like, she went in the bathroom this morning and started singing a song because the acoustics in there are wicked, right? So she's like, how far I'll go. And she's singing, and I'm like, I'm tearing up listening to this because she's in two rooms away, but I can hear her because the echo. And I'm like, I can't believe, like, 2 years ago, she didn't even exist. And now she's, like, singing these songs that she's heard only a couple times. And she's just, like, expressing it. It's crazy, man. It's such a beautiful time. And to miss any of it is wild.
And I think, and again, let me know if you're not happy to go into it on the show, but I know it's something we discussed in the initial call that we had before this recording, is the struggles that you had to have your daughter.
Yeah.
Are you happy to go into that on the show?
Yeah.
Great. And the reason I say that is because I think for a lot of people, having a child is so easy in the sense that by accident, they do the deed and next thing you know, they've got a kid on the way. So they just massively take it for granted. And I say take it for granted, you know, like we co-sleep with our children. As soon as this finishes, I'm climbing back into bed with our daughter and my wife sleeps with our son. We just always made that decision because we know the time's going to come when they're not going to want crutches. And a couple of 1,000 years ago with the cavemen, they weren't picking their children up and letting themselves soothe and putting them in a separate room because there was a risk of saber-toothed tigers.
That's right.
That's
right. Yeah.
Your child grows in your wife's stomach for 9 months and they're like, oh, welcome to the world. Now you've got to sleep on your own. And again, completely personal choice that we made, but we co-sleep. We absolutely love it. The time's going to come. Don't know how old she's going to be, but my daughter's going to say, Dad, I'm going in my bed.
Yeah.
I'm like, right, that's fine. But until she says that, then I'm going to keep touching her. But you had struggles, didn't you, having your daughter?
I did, yeah. You know, and I've opened up lately about talking about it because it is a very, it's obviously a personal thing, but I think it's important that people do talk about it because when we were going through the process, we didn't really have people to talk to about it. We couldn't relate with anybody. And then turns out after you do it, then like everybody reaches out and they're like, oh my God, we had to do that too. And I'm like, why didn't you didn't say it? Why didn't you tell us? That would have helped us. We could have talked about it. And I think people are just scared to talk about it. So I'm getting more comfortable talking about it. But we went through IUI and IVF, which is the processes are vastly different. I mean, ultimately the bottom line is we, for whatever reason, could conceive, like my boys and her girls were fine, right? My sperm and eggs, everything was fine. But for whatever reason, it wasn't clicking. It didn't make sense. And we can go into the rabbit holes that is. Probably maybe another episode, but I think a lot of it has to do with microplastics and, you know, the food system. And there's so many hormone disruptors out there that I think a lot of people are suffering now, you know, with not being able to conceive because the last couple decades of food. But anyway, different topic. But we went through IUI and we tried that 3 times, didn't take. And then we had to do IVF, which is more evasive and much more stress on the female's body. And that whole process took about 3 years. 3 years and about $250,000.
Wow.
And obviously, as you can imagine, not just physical stress on my wife, but the emotional stress, right, for her. But I would probably say the biggest thing that people don't talk about when this process happens is the stress on the marriage. Like where there comes to just speaking, like you find yourself not talking about anything except that. And obviously they're not good conversations, right? When you spend all this money and you're doing these tests and you're doing shots to try to like boost and change hormones to coincide with like ovulation, and like all this stuff is very technical. And then the ovulation thing and, you know, the fun part about conceiving turns into a job.
Yeah.
So the lack of intimacy there, and it's just there's a lot of thing that kind of goes down, and then eventually it gets to the point where like our marriage was really suffering because we both wanted a kid, and we realized that hey, if this wasn't going to happen, we're going to go off a different route, like maybe surrogacy or adoption. And obviously, if you're familiar with that, that's even more of a stressful situation and could take longer. And I'm almost 40, she's almost 40, so it's like now the clock is ticking, right? So there's that added component to it. Finally, after all this, we were able to conceive, and through the second IVF and 3-year process, we got the kid. And it's obviously the greatest thing that's ever happened to us. And it's funny when that does happen, and I think, to your point, talking about this struggle, and we talk about parents, unless you go through the struggles like the struggles you went through in 2020, and kind of circling back to the beginning of the podcast, these failures end up being the success. But I think people do have a very easy time conceiving, don't really have the appreciation for it. Similar to how like a kid that raises in the household of a millionaire, they're not going to be as successful because they don't feel the struggle. When you're spoon-fed everything, I think you don't appreciate what you do have. And when we weren't able to have a kid, and then finally we got one, it's like now we're going to do everything we can to show our appreciation to her and do what's right for her and to spend as much time as we can. And that's why, unfortunately, we don't like do childcare, or, we don't even, have the grandparents watch the kids. And it's not personal. It's just we want to do things a certain way. And we obviously spend a lot of time with the grandparents, and they love her and we love them, and we have a big family and it's great. But we're just not in a situation where we're comfortable with that right now. And I think a lot of it has to do with, we tried for so long, and then she's finally here. Like, friends make mistakes, grandparents make mistakes. I mean, you could Google thousands of stories a day that happen where grandparents go to the mall and they lose the kid. Like, I mean, it happens, and you leave it with the babysitter, and then there's some creepo that comes over that ends up touching your kid. Like, this happens, and it's scary, and it's the real life. And like we talked about, the world is not nice, and I would rather deal with the consequences of 18 years from now, my daughter's mad at me because I spent too much time with her. I'd rather deal with that.
What a problem to have.
I'd rather deal with that than risk the latter, right? So I think that's what people don't get when you're able to have a kid so easily, is you don't get that. I don't want to say like stronger bond, because that's not the right word, but it is different, because I do feel more protective. I feel that I'm going to work out more for her. I feel that I'm going to work harder for her. I just feel more like, I'm not going to fucking lose you, dude. I've worked so hard to get you. There's nothing in this world that's going to stop me from spending time with you. And
so powerful.
Yeah. So that's where we're at.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot of love there. Hence your t-shirt. What does it say? Girl Dad.
Yeah, this is actually my apparel brand, Girl Dad.
Okay, tell us more about that.
Oh yeah, so it's called Human Dad.
Okay.
And I started it about 6 months ago. And my whole, even my podcast is humanity and hashtags. And I've always kind of had this mantra of like, we're all human and we all make mistakes. And kind of like what I've been talking about this whole time is like, it's been my stoic attitude for decades. It's just me. Is like, we're all human, and it's okay that we make mistakes and embrace the chaos. So like Human Dad apparel is for dads that, that don't pretend like they have their shit together.
Okay.
There's a lot of apparel brands out there that if you look at them on social media, or if you look at the apparel itself, it's like best dad, number one dad, or world's greatest dad, or like their social media is so pretty
Paint
and
a perfect picture.
Yeah, and at Human Dad, we're quite the opposite. You know, like there's like this brand in particular. This is our Girl Dad line, which if you watched Fight Club, we call this the Girl Dad Club. So on the back, there's 8 rules to being a girl dad. And again, if you look at like Fight Club, he says, hey, the first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. Second rule of Fight Club, you don't talk about Fight Club. So it's kind of like on the back of the shirt, there's 8 rules of being a girl dad where it plays off that.
Okay.
So like rule number 1 is if you're a girl dad, you always talk about your daughter. Rule 2, you always talk about your daughter, right? And there's 8 rules. So we kind of like, we do things like that where we kind of play off the rough, chaotic times about being a dad. And it's been fun.
Celebrating it as well, isn't it?
Yeah, man, for sure. Because I think that's where true community lies. You know, same thing with your brand, right? I think it's if you could find commonalities of fuck ups, I think that's what creates a strong bond. You know, like some of my best friends in the world were the ones that I went through battle with, right? It's not like my best friends are the ones that everything's perfect with. It's always the ones that go through the shit. So I think we always say at Human Dad, it's like community first, apparel second. Because if we can just stick with each other and realize that, hey man, embrace the suck, embrace the chaos, it's all good. It's what's being a dad is all about. I think if we could stick together in that aspect and have some cool apparel along the way, that's a win-win. So that's what I'm trying to build.
Exactly. Yeah. And there'll be that community element which naturally grows that brand without thinking about it as well, because people want to share it.
Yeah, dude, for sure. Yeah. And that's what it is. And I think, you know, that goes with everything too, right? Like if you're able to kind of share, like even the IVF story I talked about, if there's people out there that have that story, I think it's important to share, you know, those wild times, because there's a lot more people going through rough shit than you think. I mean, I would even say probably there's more people going through rough shit than good shit on a daily, right? Like, again, line up 100 people, I think 90 people had a bad day. And you never know, because people typically are scared to talk about it, specifically men. So I think if we can get better at talking about it and sharing our feelings, I think we're all going to get a little bit more comfortable and just kind of get on the same wavelength, you know?
Yeah. Love what you said around the men opening up. We don't. And it's definitely one of our weaknesses, and it doesn't help when social media is just used to paint the perfect picture all the time, isn't it? You very rarely see people posting the crap stuff on social media. Oh, crashed my car today, or this has happened, or struggling with this. It's always, yeah. And you may have even seen yourself. You'll see someone post on social media, oh my God, just come back from the most amazing holiday. And you speak to them, oh, you had a good holiday, did you? Oh no, it was horrible. Me and my wife were arguing every day. The kids were a nightmare. I had food poisoning. You're like, well, you've just posted feeling blessed, best holiday ever. And it's like, it's, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
So everything you're doing with Dadpreneur and everything you're doing with your content brand, everything you're doing with your podcast, everything you're doing with the course that you're releasing on YouTube, putting yourself in a position of this 35 or late 30s dad, got a couple of kids. He's got himself locked into those societal expectations of work your way up the corporate ladder, earn loads of money, drive a nice car, buy a big house. But he's miserable. He never sees his kids. He's out of shape. He's always working. He's always stressed. What should he start to do to, I guess, start living that better life? He secretly knows he wants that better life. He knows what it is. He knows everything we've talked about. He's got that feeling. He just wants a more simple life, more enjoyable, spend more time with his kids. Where should he start?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to give you 2 answers if that's okay.
Yes, please.
So the first answer is the fastest and probably the least effective, but it makes the most sense. Get away for 2 weeks. Go somewhere with the family. But it can't be like if you're in the UK, for example, it can't be the UK. Pick Australia, pick Hawaii, go to America, go to Utah. If you're in America, go to Italy, go to Spain, go to Central America. Go somewhere where you can disconnect and get away from your daily life and daily routines, or lack thereof, rather. And I think that is very beneficial, similar to like when we went to Italy. when our daughter was 1. We took her and everyone was like, you shouldn't take your daughter. You should just go on a romantic getaway with you and the wife. And we're like, no, we want to bring our daughter because we want to see what it's like to be with her in a different environment than just at the house. And it was mind blowing. When I tell you we got back from that trip after being out in Italy for 2.5 weeks, we started looking at property in Italy. And the reason I say travel and get away is because you will question everything about what you're doing. If you pick the right destination and you're happy and it's vastly different than what you're normally used to. Again, contrast, right? America, go to Europe, Europe, go to America, whatever. But if you could pick something like that, you can realize what's really important. Meaning, what clothes did you pack, right? What did you wear? What did you do? What did you eat? Because if you're eating something different than what you're normally eating, or if you wear something different than you're normally wearing, you start to realize that, wait a minute, I can function with a lot less shit than I thought. And when you start to see what is possible, okay, now how can I get to that point and live at that situation? Maybe it's not necessarily in the place that you visited, but I think that gives you a little bit more perception on some different things. And that's what helped me anyway. So that's the unrealistic, not very helpful answer, but I think it is very beneficial.
Good place to start.
Right,
exactly. It certainly is a good place to start and to give someone that bit of a motivation to really get things
disconnect. And also just get away from like your mundane life that you hate.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you're in the middle of the ocean and you're floating around and you're like, you have this like epiphany where you're like, ooh, I think I want to paint. And maybe that's your passion. Maybe you go back to where you live from your holiday and you're like, this is what I want to do now. So I think when you get disconnected away from corporate America and get disconnected away from your routine life, you start to kind of open up that part of your brain that has been shut down for so many decades because you've been working your ass off, and it kind of opens up a little bit more. So that's one thing. The other thing I would say, if you're really serious about it, is if you do work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday and your goal is to get out of that corporate job, I think even though it sucks, kind of like what you're doing, when your kids are asleep or at the weekend, instead of going out partying with your buddies, you save as much money as you can and you do your side hustles on the weekends or after work hours, and you really see if this is something you like. For example, let's talk about podcasting. So if you want to be a podcaster and that's what you want to do, you need to do that as a side hustle for a year. So you work a corporate job, but then every minute of every day you study, you watch videos, you do courses, you fucking research, you practice, you do all this type of stuff, and you do that on your free time, whatever free time that is, for a year. 365 days, 52 weeks. Go hardcore. Do as a side hustle. At the end of that year, what did you learn from it? Did you like it or hate it? If you liked it, go all in, quit your job. That's it. Just be prepared. But here's the cool thing. That year, you just saved up a shit ton of money, right? Because you weren't going out partying, you weren't drinking, you weren't going to Starbucks and spending $7 a day, you weren't going out to dinner all the time. You really put in a year of saving money and focusing on your craft. That's what I call the craft phase. If you focus on your craft for a year and you really enjoy doing it, you just worked your ass off, but you enjoy doing it. Imagine if that's all you did. Now quit your job. You have a year of money saved up. You can get a little bit more comfortable and figure out how to monetize that. So if it's a podcast, figure out how you can monetize that. Maybe open a studio, maybe do something virtual, maybe do courses or consulting. Figure out something that you're really going to enjoy doing. And you might make less money, be prepared, but at least you're loving every minute of it. That's what I would say.
Love that.
Yeah.
I think both are really important as well. Like I said, I know you said it was 2 answers, but if someone can step away and do both.
Yeah, that'd be ideal.
Great to think about what their passion might be and step out of their routine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. But also, people will have your YouTube channel to fall back on in the future as well, with little bits of tips and courses and everything. So we'll make sure to link in the show notes anything or any links we can send people to find out more about you.
Thanks, dude.
In keeping with the tradition, Tony, before I let you crack on with your day, as we started, you had your bit of life advice or a question from Mustafa Salame when you were 16. Considering the next guest, again, you don't know who it's going to be, but you're going to meet him when he's 16 years old. Bit of a pivotal phase as a young man, not sure what he wants to do. Thinks he's already a man, may not be. What life advice would you have to him?
I would say there's going to be times in your life where you're going to think to yourself, what is your purpose? And while I don't personally know the answer, the advice I would tell that young man is just enjoy the passage of time. That's it. Nothing else matters. Enjoy the passage of time. Meaning, and we talked about it before, but past, future, that doesn't matter. Be in the present. If you can enjoy the passage of time. Because when you're 16, you might end up hooking up with that first person, right? You might end up having that first beer when you're 18 and you're not supposed to. You might end up doing a lot of different. Enjoy every fucking moment. Enjoy the passage of time. Whether you're 16, you're 18, or you're 30, every moment is going to come by where it might be the last moment. It might be the first moment. Just enjoy it. Don't think about anything else except where you are. Because personally, from doing all that and now being 40 and being a father, I could say, and now I appreciate a lot more. And I think that's my purpose, is to just enjoy the passage of time, because it's very beneficial to me and it's extremely beneficial to my daughter if I could just be there in the moment with her. And I wish I did that when I was younger. So yeah, man. Yeah. I'm gonna add to my sleeve, man. That's gonna be what I'm gonna add to it. Yeah, dude. They're only gonna get bigger, bro.
Where can people find out more about you?
Easy answer is just go to my website, theberardo.com. And
The Berardo.
Yeah, and across all platforms, it's The Berardo. So TikTok, Instagram, it's the BERARDO. Same thing with YouTube, youtube.com/The Berardo. So that's my handle across all places. And then, of course, I have a podcast, Humanity and Hashtags, where we talk a lot about what we're talking about today, which is just mental and physical health, as well as social media and kind of how that correlates with each other. So
perfect. Tony, Thank you very much for coming on the Strong Dad Show.
Adam, thanks for having me, man. It's a blast.
Cheers. Guys, we'll catch you in the next one.